For years, if you were looking for the top-of-the-line Android phone, you'd probably grab a Samsung, an S something Ultra. And while sure, in 2025, at least in the United States, that might still be generally true, things are changing. But it's not because Samsung phones have gotten worse. On the contrary, they've consistently gotten better. It's just that now there's more competition and Samsung isn't innovating as much. And that's sort of the problem that I have with the S25 Ultra. It's an incredible phone in almost every way, but it really doesn't feel that different than the S24 Ultra. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like the newest iPhone of Android. So I've been using Samsung's latest top-of-the-line flagship phone, the S25 Ultra, for the last 2 weeks, and in today's video, I'm gonna tell you whether this phone is worth it. I really meant what I said. I feel like the Samsung S25 Ultra is the iPhone of the Android world. It's the safe choice. It's the one that you know that if you buy it, you're gonna be happy. But you also know you're gonna spend a lot of money for a phone that's very similar to last year's phone. And as a longtime Apple user, I'm kind of used to that. I'm used to spending $1,200 on the newest phone that has like one new feature over the previous phone. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening with the S25 Ultra. I spent $1,300 on this phone, and it's very similar to the S24 Ultra. But I really don't want to spend the whole review talking about that. I'm sure if you've watched other reviews, you know already that this is a very slight iterative improvement over the previous phone. That said, if you're looking for a new Android phone or a new Samsung Ultra phone, this is the only way to go. The S25 Ultra is incredible. I mean, it's an all-around astounding phone. But let's first talk about what you've got going on under the hood. In this phone, you've got a Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy processor, which is incredibly fast. This chipset is actually one of the biggest upgrades from last year's phone. It is significantly faster. We're talking 35 to 40% faster in certain applications. When it comes to gaming, the S25 Ultra is incredibly fast. I mean, it's mind-blowingly fast. It handled every single game that I threw at it with no issues. And not only can it handle a lot of the top-of-the-line games currently, it's also pretty much future-proofed because you're getting a very, very powerful processor that should last you a long time. In addition to the processor, you also get 12 gigabytes of RAM, which give you a very snappy experience. Overall, I had no lag whatsoever on this phone. It was incredibly fast and noticeably faster than my S24 Ultra with games. So if you're looking for the latest and greatest and fastest Samsung phones, the S25 Ultra really is the way to go. Now, you did hear that right. All of the new S25s do feature the same processor, no matter whether you're grabbing the S25, the S25 Plus, or the S25 Ultra, and they all also feature 12 gigabytes of RAM, so there really isn't that big of a difference between the current lineup. However, compared to previous phones, it is a pretty big step up. Now, getting to onboard storage, it's very similar to what you had in previous years. You've got a 256 gigabyte option, which is what I have here, a 512, and if you're willing to spend the money, a 1 terabyte option. Now, I personally store a lot of my photos and videos on the cloud, and I pay for the cloud service, so I don't actually need that extra storage, but sometimes it's nice to have, especially if you're filming in log, which we'll talk about later. Now let's get this out of the way right out of the gate. Unfortunately, this phone is still very expensive, like last year's version. It starts at $1,300, which is not cheap, but this is a flagship phone. We will talk about whether you should get this phone or last year's phone later on in the video, because obviously you can get last year's phone for cheaper, especially if you're buying it used. But I will say $1,300 is a tough pill to swallow for a minor upgrade over last year's version. And of course, if you decide to upgrade the internal storage from 256 to 512 or even a terabyte, the price will go up in tiers along with that. But now let's talk about the screen, the beautiful, honestly gorgeous screen. Now, one of the changes that Samsung made from the S24 Ultra to the S25 Ultra was changing the size of the screen from 6.8 inches to 6.9 inches. Really, the way that they did that was by changing the external shape of the phone and also the size of the bezels. So the bezels got a little bit thinner, and that's really just because the shape of the phone changed a little bit. As you can see, this year Samsung opted for much flatter edges, similar to what you have on the iPhone. Obviously, the curves in the corner are not as rounded as you have on an iPhone, so you do get a little bit more diagonal space there. Compared to last year's S24 Ultra, I actually do kind of prefer this design. I feel like it's a little bit more sleek, a little bit more professional feeling, and I really like the way it feels in the hand. The edges aren't as rounded, so I think some people prefer the more rounded edges because they feel like it fits a little bit better in the hand. But for myself, and I'm sure most of you, I use it with a case. I have it out of the case for the review. So the actual physical feeling of the edges doesn't usually affect me. I will say though that visually, I really, really love the way that this phone looks, especially in this black color, which is actually only available on Samsung's website. I bought this for the full $1,300 on Samsung's website, and I think it looks gorgeous. Very similar to last year's version, but still gorgeous. I mean, let's be honest. The iPhone hasn't looked different in what? 5 years, so you can't really fault Samsung for just kind of maintaining their design language on this device. The screen itself is 3120 by 1440. It's an AMOLED display and looks absolutely incredible. The display also comes with a variable refresh rate of 1 to 120 Hertz, which means swiping back and forth is buttery smooth on this phone, and you can save battery life when you're not using it. Really great to have that, really love that feature. And like last year's S24 Ultra, this phone does also feature that anti-reflective coating, which looks amazing. You can sort of see it in the light. I think on the S25 Ultra, it's the second generation Corning Gorilla Glass glare reducing coating or whatever it's called. It doesn't seem to be that different than the S24, but it is really nice to have, and it's a night and day difference between an iPhone. Genuinely, when you use this phone outside, it's incredible. And even in the studio where I've got a ton of lights, it really does a great job of stopping that glare. It's amazing. Obviously, for media consumption and gaming, the screen looks absolutely incredible. I actually prefer this more squared off display to the iPhone display because it allows you to have a much more natural viewing experience. You don't have the cut off edges like you have with the iPhone, especially when you zoom into the display. Now, I will say I don't love the pinhole camera in the center of the display. I've never loved pinhole cameras. They just kind of take away from the clean aesthetic of the phone. But, you know, all phones have that nowadays, so there's not really much you can do about it. But talking about the physical design of this phone, you've really only got two buttons on the right side. You've got a volume rocker on the top, and then a power on and off button just below that. I don't love the volume rocker being right above the power button. I kind of like having it on one side and then the power button on the other side, but I also kind of like having nothing on this side. So, you know, there's pluses and minuses to everything. The phone feels incredibly premium in the hand, as it should for a $1,300 phone. Now, again, I put a case on it, so I don't really feel it, but having it outside of the case feels great. On the bottom of the phone, you got your SIM card tray, you've got your USB-C, and you've also got your S Pen on the left side, right here. Oddly enough, it comes in a tan color, which is odd because the phone itself is black, at least my phone is. The S Pen still does S Pen-like things, except it's not as capable as previous S Pens, and that's because the S Pen no longer has Bluetooth support, which if you liked... Yes, I've got it. The S Pen still does pretty much all of your S Pen-like things, which is good if you like using your S Pen. The one thing it can't do anymore is remote shutter because it doesn't have Bluetooth support, which means if you want to take a photo, you know, standing from a distance, you can't do that anymore with the S Pen, which is like the only thing that I use the S Pen for, so it's kind of a bummer. Now, granted, I didn't use the S Pen for that much, but it is kind of a bummer that I lost that feature. But now let's get into battery life, because that's one of those things that people wonder about and worry about when they buy a new phone. Is my phone gonna last all day? And in the case of the S25 Ultra, with the 5,000 milliamp hour battery that you get, yeah, it'll last you all day. Generally, I found that this phone gave me 12 to 15 hours of consistent use, which is basically a day and a half without charging. I watch a lot of YouTube, generally on my TV or on my laptop or on my phone, so that's kind of split between different devices. When I use this just for YouTube, I got around 15 to 20 hours. It's not like a perfect test because I didn't sit there with the phone on. I just kind of recorded whenever I watched YouTube and then paused when I stopped watching YouTube. But it's a pretty decent battery. Is it as good as last year's phone? From my own testing, it seems very similar to last year's phone. I don't know if it's exactly the same, if it's better or if it's worse, but it's very capable. It's all I need, and I don't have any qualms whatsoever with the battery life. As far as charging goes, you can get up to 45 watts of wired charging, which can charge your phone in just over an hour from 0 to 100. Wireless charging, unfortunately, is limited to just 15 watts, so it's a much slower process. Also, this phone is Qi 2 capable, which means that you can use Qi 2 chargers. Unfortunately, though, this phone does not come with the magnets that you need to actually center the wireless charger or connect the wireless charger like you have with iPhones and MagSafe. So while it is capable of using that standard, you can't actually use the magnets unless you put on a specific case for it, which is very odd. That said though, after years of having wireless chargers in my car, in my office, in my bedroom, I really always tend to use wired chargers, just because they charge faster, and I also have those right next to my wireless chargers. I just never really use the wireless chargers. So for me, doesn't really matter that much. I'm sure it's different for everybody, but for me, I don't really use wireless chargers. But now let's talk about the cameras on this phone. And in a lot of ways, they are very similar to last year's cameras, which is kind of the case for almost everything on this phone. You've got a 50 megapixel telephoto and a 10 megapixel telephoto, but where this phone really shines, and the biggest upgrade that they've made to this phone, is the brand new 50 megapixel ultra wide lens. And this is something I actually asked for last year. I film a lot of videos on my phone, and I found that the ultra wide setting is one that I actually use on a very regular basis. So to add a 50 megapixel ultra wide is great, especially when I'm filming like this or just filming myself. It just is so much easier to frame the shot when there's a way bigger frame. So that's great to have, and as you would expect from a Samsung phone, it takes incredible photos. Now I've taken some photos here to give you guys an idea of how the photos look, and I've compared them against an iPhone 16 Pro Max to show you sort of what the differences are between the two phones, because in my mind, these are the two best cameras that you can buy on phones in the current American market. I think they look incredible. I still personally prefer the color accuracy of the iPhone over the Samsung. The Samsung S25 Ultra, well, I think the camera looks better than the S24 Ultra because I don't think the colors are as saturated. It still seems a tad oversaturated over the iPhone. I feel like the iPhone still takes more true to life photos. But hey, if you prefer the way that the S25 Ultra looks, more power to you. I still think it's a great camera phone. And I still think the zooms are better in the S25 Ultra over the iPhone. Now when it comes to video, kind of the same deal. I still prefer the iPhone's video. I still feel like it's a little bit more natural. I still think it looks a little bit better, but it's really your own opinion. All right, so this is what a vlog looks and sounds like on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. What do you guys think? Do you think it sounds good? Do you think it looks good? Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, so this is what a vlog looks and sounds like on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Do you prefer this? Do you prefer the Samsung? Let me know in the comments. But honestly, I would be fine with either. I think they both look incredible, and if I only had one, I'd be happy. But I really can't say this enough. The Samsung S25 Ultra has incredible cameras. Like, it doesn't get much better than this, so I don't know, it's tough. Now, one brand new feature on the S25 Ultra is the ability to now film in log, which, let's be honest, when it comes out of the camera, it doesn't look great. It just looks all gray. But the reason that it looks like that is because it's actually storing more data of the highlights and the lowlights than a standard video file would, which means that after you film something, you can actually put it into editing software and really get exactly the color that you want and the highlights and the lowlights that you want. You can't really do that with standard video files. Now, this is something that the iPhone's been able to do for a little bit, so it's not a brand new feature, and obviously it's something that DSLR cameras have been able to do for a very long time. But I will say it is very nice to have on the S25 Ultra, and you can actually do auto color correction on this phone directly on the phone itself, which you can't do with the iPhone. Now that said, like I mentioned earlier, I film almost all of my vlogs on my phones, and I actually don't film in log. And the reason for that is because log creates significantly larger video files than a standard video file. And for me, I'm only posting my vlogs on YouTube or on social media, so I don't need ridiculously high resolution videos on either of those platforms. I use 4K, but I don't need like the ultimate color correction. So for me, I don't think the trade-off in video size is worth it for the adjustability in highlights and lowlights. For a lot of people it is though. For me, I just don't need that ultimate adjustability when it comes to highlights and lowlights, so I'm fine with just the standard video output that comes out of either phone. I will say though, it's really nice to have the option, and if I was to post something on, I guess, a more high-end platform, like maybe a float plane or a, I don't know, like in a movie theater, maybe I'd use log, but I just don't feel like I need it. I actually have never used float plane in my life. I have no idea if it's a more high-end platform or not, but there you go. An additional feature that the S25 Ultra has is a new AI audio eraser, which allows you to erase background noise while you're filming. It's pretty cool. It's not groundbreaking, it's not amazing, but it's something that can be upgraded through software in the future, so it probably will get better. Now, of course, being a phone released in 2025, it's got a lot of AI features. The iPhone has a lot of AI features. The Samsung phones have a lot of AI features. All the ones you had in last year's phone, they're still there. You've still got circle to search. You've still got item removal from photos. There's a lot of AI features that are actually genuinely useful on this phone, but honestly, none that I really use on a regular basis, personally. Maybe you're different, but I don't really use them. The only one that I use on a semi-regular basis is circle to search. Now, it's not one that I need, because on an iPhone, you can literally just upload a photo to Google and it'll do the same thing. But it is nice to be able to circle something on a website and be like, what is that? Or maybe take a photo of something and be like, what bug is that? Or what shoe is that? Because you guys know I love sneakers. So that's a nice touch, but it's on every Android phone and you can do it with the Google app on your iPhone, so it's not a huge deal. Obviously, there are a ton of other AI features which I could talk about, like Translate, which is actually amazing if you go to a different country. I just went to Saudi Arabia, worked great. But there's nothing really new or groundbreaking that I thought was worth mentioning personally. Let me know in the comment section down below if there are any AI features that you love about the S25 Ultra that I should have mentioned. Some other nice ones, I guess, are call summaries and YouTube summarization, and of course Gemini is 10 times better than Siri. I mean, it's night and day. Sure, I can say things like, take a photo with the front-facing camera. It's loading. I think it will, though.
I'm not able to help with that, as I'm only a language model.
All right. Well, it's worked before. That's embarrassing. That said, out of all the AI software that I've used, it seems like Google is kind of on top when it comes to AI smart assistants or virtual assistants. So if that's what you're looking for, go Android over iPhone. There you go. So like I said at the beginning of the review, the Samsung S25 Ultra is an excellent all-around phone in pretty much every regard. The battery life, solid. The camera's incredible. The power of this phone, I mean, it's unmatched, especially within Androids. Well, that might not be totally true, but it's very, very powerful. The screen, absolutely gorgeous. The anti-reflective coating is actually incredible. It's better than any phone that I've ever used. The face unlock, the fingerprint sensor, there's so many things about this phone that have been perfected. And I think in a lot of ways, that's really what the S25 Ultra is. It's the best version of the S phone ever. It's absolutely incredible. This is my go-to Android phone. Now, with that being said, is the value there? Is this a $1,300 phone? Well, in my opinion, if you have a phone that's older than maybe the S22, or maybe you don't have an Android phone, or maybe you don't have a Samsung, this is a phone to go with. It's worth the $1,300. However, if you own something like the S23 Ultra or the S24 Ultra, there's honestly no reason to upgrade. And if you're trying to be a bit more budget conscious, if you could find an S24 Ultra for a significantly better price, I say go that way. It's still got 7 years of updates, just like this phone. It's still gonna be very capable for many years to come. And I really think that other than the minor design changes and also the upgraded processor, there's not much about this phone that warrants an upgrade. So yes, if you're looking to get into the Samsung ecosystem, if you're looking for the best of the best Samsung phone, or maybe you have an older Samsung S device, then the S25 Ultra is absolutely worth it. If you already have an S24 or S23, wait for the next one. But hey, if you made it to this point in the video, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the S25 Ultra. Do you have one? Do you want one? Let me know all those thoughts down below. If you want to grab one of these phones for yourself, I've made sure to link it through the affiliate links in the description below and also through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.